There is a common misconception that softness in a woman equals weakness, when in truth, softness can be one of the most powerful forms of strength. To be soft is not to be naive. It is to remain tender in a world that often pressures women to harden themselves as a form of protection. A woman who carries softness consciously is not defenseless. She is discerning. She knows when to open her heart and when to stand firm, and this balance creates an aura that is magnetic. People sense that her gentleness is not born of fear, but of choice, and choice is what makes it powerful. Carl Jung emphasized that feminine energy, when integrated, does not bow to domination. Instead, it holds its ground through presence. The true essence of the feminine is not submission, but depth, the ability to remain receptive without being consumed, to embody tenderness without losing clarity. A woman who understands this does not mistake her empathy for permission to be disrespected. Her softness is the language of her authenticity, while her awareness ensures she is never diminished in it. This harmony between openness and self-possession creates a form of magnetism that men recognize immediately, even if they cannot name it. The psychological impact of this balance is profound. When a woman carries softness rooted in awareness, she becomes unpredictable to those who seek to manipulate. They expect submission, but encounter discernment. They expect fragility, but encounter strength hidden beneath grace. The men who come with pure intentions feel invited, seen, and welcomed. The men who arrive with games or demands find themselves unsettled, because her softness is not weakness, but a mirror of their own intentions. In this way, her presence naturally filters who is worthy and who is not. Examples from daily life reveal this hidden strength. A woman listens with patience during a heated exchange, but when a line is crossed, she responds with calm firmness instead of anger. Her softness allows her to understand the other, but her awareness prevents her from excusing disrespect. Another woman maintains a tender, nurturing demeanor with friends or family, but when manipulation appears, she quietly withdraws, making it clear that her kindness is not an invitation for abuse. In both cases, her softness reinforces respect rather than diminishing it. This quality is magnetic because it is rare. Many assume they must harden their hearts to avoid pain, but in doing so, they lose the very warmth that draws authentic connection. Others remain soft without boundaries and are taken advantage of. The woman who blends both, tenderness and awareness, embodies a paradox that inspires reverence. She is approachable, yet untouchable, gentle, yet firm, inviting, yet discerning. Men sense immediately that this is not a woman to be played with, even as they are drawn to her light. Jung's perspective helps explain why. In his view, power is not only about force, but about integration. When the feminine integrates strength into its softness, it becomes complete. It does not deny vulnerability, but it refuses to confuse vulnerability with availability to harm. It does not deny gentleness, but it grounds that gentleness in self-respect. The energy of such a woman is both nurturing and commanding, creating a presence that cannot be ignored. She is not pretending to be strong by hardening. She is genuinely strong because she remains soft without losing herself. Ultimately, the hidden strength of softness lies in choice. To remain soft when the world has given you every reason to grow bitter is not weakness, it is mastery. It communicates that you know who you are, that you do not need to raise your voice to command respect, and that you can embrace tenderness without surrendering your dignity. This is the kind of softness that men admire and even fear, because it is softness that refuses to be broken. And in that quiet strength, you find not only respect, but a magnetism that deepens with every season of life. There is a fine line between being open and being exposed. Receptivity is a gift, but without discernment, it can become a doorway for manipulation. Many women confuse the two, believing that to be empathetic is to reveal everything, to share all emotions without filter, to let anyone who shows interest step inside their inner world. Yet Jung would argue that true receptivity is never without awareness. The feminine, in its mature form, receives with grace, but guards what is sacred. To open completely without first observing is not softness, it is exposure. And exposure attracts those who thrive on taking without giving. The difference shows itself in subtle ways. Receptivity listens, but also measures the weight of what is being said. Exposure, on the other hand, rushes to fill silence with confessions. Receptivity notices patterns over time. Exposure hands over trust to anyone who offers attention. The distinction may seem small, but in relationships, it is decisive. A receptive woman inspires respect. An exposed woman invites tests. The choice to remain receptive rather than exposed is not about fear. It is about protecting the essence of your heart. Men who lack maturity often sense when a woman confuses openness with exposure. They test boundaries under the disguise of interest, pushing for secrets too soon, dismissing hesitations as unnecessary, making subtle remarks that see how much you are willing to tolerate. These tests are rarely obvious, but they are deliberate. A man who respects will accept your pace. A man who does not will pressure, coax, or guilt you into revealing more. Your response in these moments determines whether he perceives you as someone to honor or someone to exploit. This is why empathy, without boundaries, becomes dangerous. It can lead to situations where you give the benefit of the doubt long after respect has already been broken. A kind word becomes a license for him to repeat harmful behavior. An excuse made in his favor becomes permission for him to press further. When empathy crosses the line into exposure, your softness becomes unprotected. Instead of magnetism, it creates exhaustion. The key is not to silence empathy, but to anchor it in awareness. Jung described the archetype of the guardian as the one who knows what must be welcomed and what must be shielded. In the feminine, this archetype appears as the ability to hold space for another's story while protecting one's own. The guardian listens, but she does not hand over her sanctuary without trust. She welcomes presence, but does not confuse every visitor with a guest of honor. To embody this archetype means to remain warm without being careless, generous without being naive, and open without being defenseless. Practical examples of this balance appear in small moments. You meet someone new, and instead of sharing your deepest wounds immediately, you let time reveal their consistency. You feel empathy for a man's struggles, but you do not excuse disrespect in the name of his pain. You allow space for conversation, but you hold back details that belong only to those who have proven loyalty. In these pauses, you preserve your worth. You are not withholding out of fear. You are preserving because what is sacred deserves protection. The beauty of this balance is that it does not harden the heart. On the contrary, it makes softness sustainable. By differentiating openness from exposure, you create a space where tenderness is no longer dangerous. Your empathy remains intact, but it is no longer a weakness to be exploited. Instead, it becomes a gift reserved for those who approach with respect. In this way, your softness transforms into strength, a strength that does not need to be loud because it is carried in the quiet wisdom of knowing when to open and when to guard. Not every man deserves access to your vulnerability, and the sooner this truth is embraced, the more peaceful and dignified your relationships become. Vulnerability is sacred. It is not about confessing every fear or exposing every scar to anyone who asks. It is about choosing who has earned the privilege to see your depths. Jung often reminded us that discernment is part of individuation, the process of becoming whole. When you learn to select carefully who enters your inner circle, you are not closing yourself off from love, you are cultivating it in its purest form. Silence and observation become your first guardians. Instead of rushing to explain yourself, you allow time to do the revealing. A man may say all the right things at first, but his actions will eventually betray his intentions. Does he listen as much as he speaks? Does he honor your boundaries when they inconvenience him? Does his presence bring calm, or does it drain your energy? These questions are answered not through interrogation, but through patience. By holding back immediate disclosure, you create space where the truth has no choice but to show itself. Time itself is the filter. In the early days of a connection, it is tempting to interpret excitement as certainty, but true intentions can only be measured through consistency. A man who shows up with respect once may be performing. A man who does it again and again without pressure or hidden agenda reveals sincerity. Observation requires restraint, but it also offers protection. In waiting, you discover who grows impatient, who respects your rhythm, and who vanishes the moment your openness is not immediately available. Discernment, then, becomes the language of self-respect. It is not cynicism to hold back. It is wisdom. Vulnerability without discernment is like leaving the doors of your home wide open to strangers. Discernment means locking the door, not to isolate yourself, but to ensure that whoever enters does so with reverence. It is the recognition that your emotional energy is finite, and that it must be shared with those who can hold it carefully. The act of choosing who receives your trust is itself a statement of worth. Examples from daily life show how powerful this can be. You meet someone who overwhelms you with compliments, but instead of handing them your trust, you watch if their actions match their words. You spend time with someone who enjoys your company, but you wait to see how they react when you say no. You allow someone close, but reveal your deeper truths only after they have shown loyalty. In each case, your vulnerability becomes a gift, not a currency. It is not used to buy affection. It is offered as a reward for authenticity. This process also redefines the way you see yourself. When you realize you do not need to reveal everything to be loved, you stop fearing rejection. You understand that the right man will not be frustrated by your pace, but will respect it. He will not demand entry into your soul. He will wait at the gate until invited. In that waiting, he proves himself. And in that choosing, you prove to yourself that your vulnerability is not weakness, but the highest form of strength, because it is given only where it will be cherished. Ultimately, the act of selecting who deserves your vulnerability is not about exclusion, it is about preservation. You are not closing doors, you are opening them with intention. By using silence, observation, and discernment, you ensure that your softness does not become exposure and that your tenderness is met with reverence rather than exploitation. This balance allows your vulnerability to remain what it was always meant to be, a bridge to true intimacy, not a path to unnecessary wounds. Limits, when expressed with clarity, become a language of respect. Many believe that setting boundaries requires hardness, but the truth is the opposite. The clearer your limits, the more your softness can flourish. A firm no, spoken without anger, is often more powerful than a long explanation. A pause instead of overcompensation communicates, "I value myself enough to protect what matters." Jung described individuation as the integration of all parts of the self, and this integration allows you to be gentle without being fragile, open without being exposed, loving without being diminished. There is a paradox here. The moment you stop fearing that boundaries will make you seem unkind, you discover that boundaries actually make your kindness safer. They ensure that your warmth is not taken for weakness, that your empathy is not mistaken for availability without limits. Men often respect more deeply the woman who knows where she ends and where she begins, because they sense she will not lose herself in pursuit of their attention. Respect grows not from constant giving, but from balanced exchange. The softer you remain, the more necessary it becomes to draw these invisible lines. Daily life shows how this paradox works in subtle ways. A woman who responds to a disrespectful comment with a steady, simple phrase, "I don't accept being spoken to like that," communicates more than anger ever could. Another who calmly withdraws from a situation rather than arguing endlessly demonstrates self-respect without bitterness. Another who states, "I need time for myself tonight," shows that solitude is not rejection, but self-preservation. Each of these gestures preserves her softness because it protects her from resentment. She does not harden, she sustains. Boundaries are not cages, they are doors, and the way you use them teaches others how to approach you. A man who honors those doors proves he is capable of respect. A man who pushes against them reveals his immaturity. You do not need to shout to defend yourself. Boundaries spoken quietly yet firmly carry more authority than anger ever could. They become the silent architecture of respect, ensuring that your tenderness is met with reverence and not with exploitation. Jung would say that this is the work of individuation, weaving strength and delicacy into a single fabric. When you integrate these opposites, you discover that they are not contradictions, but complements. Strength does not cancel softness, it protects it. Softness does not cancel strength, it humanizes it. The woman who understands this balance becomes magnetic because she embodies wholeness. She is not pretending to be strong by shutting down her tenderness, nor pretending to be soft by ignoring her limits. She is both, fully and unapologetically. The paradox also reshapes how you see yourself. Instead of feeling guilty for saying no, you begin to feel empowered by it. Instead of fearing that boundaries will make you seem cold, you realize they keep your warmth alive. You no longer feel torn between being kind and being respected. You see that the two walk hand in hand when guided by discernment. Limits do not diminish your femininity, they frame it. They do not silence your voice, they give it weight. Ultimately, transforming limits into a language of respect means that you no longer choose between tenderness and strength. You embody both. The man who meets you there will sense that your softness is not naive, but intentional. He will feel the paradox of being welcomed and held, yet never allowed to cross what is sacred. And in that paradox, your femininity reaches its fullest expression, not fragile, not hardened, but whole, dignified, and radiant. Softness, when chosen consciously, becomes one of the most magnetic qualities a woman can carry into her later years. It is not the softness of naivety, but the softness of strength, a gentleness that exists because she knows she can protect herself. This is the kind of presence that draws respect without effort. A woman who chooses to remain kind even after disappointments radiates an energy that is rare and deeply admired. People sense that her softness is no longer vulnerability waiting to be exploited, but maturity expressed in grace. Carl Jung would describe this as the integration of feminine energy into its most complete form. It is not the submissive softness that bends at the first sign of pressure, but the deliberate softness of someone who could harden and refuses to. It is the queen archetype expressed not in cold distance, but in warmth that refuses to be disrespected. This conscious softness does not seek to prove itself, it simply is. And its quiet confidence is what makes it magnetic. The beauty of this softness is that it does not fade with time. On the contrary, it grows stronger the more it is lived with awareness. A woman who smiles without needing to please, who listens without absorbing disrespect, who speaks with gentleness, but also with weight, embodies a presence that cannot be ignored. Men may approach her out of desire, but they remain near her out of reverence. They learn quickly that kindness is not an invitation to take advantage, and that tenderness is not the same as weakness. Respect becomes the condition of closeness. Examples of this balance appear everywhere. A woman forgives, but does not forget her worth. She welcomes conversation, but knows when to step back. She nurtures with care, but will not allow herself to be consumed. In each of these actions, Her softness remains intact, but it is never blind. It is guided by discernment, sustained by self-respect. This is why her presence feels different. She is approachable, but not available to everyone. Warm, but not formless. Gentle, but never without boundaries. This conscious softness also transforms her self-image. No longer does she feel that she must harden to survive, nor does she fear that kindness will leave her defenseless. Instead, she understands that her greatest power lies in the choice to remain tender without being naive. The harshness of the world no longer dictates who she becomes. She dictates it herself, and in doing so, she embodies the paradox of mature femininity. Softness as resilience, gentleness as authority. Stories of women who have found this balance testify to its magnetism. They are not remembered for their hardness, but for their grace under pressure. They inspire others not by hiding their hearts, but by protecting them wisely. Their softness, guarded and deliberate, outlasts youth, beauty, and trends, becoming a timeless force that captivates all who encounter it. They show that the true measure of power is not in raising one's voice, but in choosing when and how to remain tender. Ultimately, the woman who embraces conscious softness becomes unforgettable. She is gentle because she is strong, approachable because she is discerning, loving because she is free. She does not trade her dignity for attention, nor her kindness for approval. And in this balance, she becomes magnetic in a way that cannot be imitated. The queen within her does not rule with hardness, but with a softness so complete that it cannot be bent by disrespect. This is the final truth. Softness, when lived with awareness, is not weakness. It is the most enduring form of strength.